Did you ever get any help with your parents through, shall we say, the first 30 years of your life in dealing with the sensitivities that you had and all of the energies you felt? Did anybody even recognize what you were going through?
No, absolutely not. Actually, when I turned about, in my mid-20s, I started using therapy, talk therapy and group therapy, trying to understand what was going on with me and why. I was the only member of my family, 9 children. I was the only one that wasn't married. I was the only one that didn't have successful relationships, if you will, or have children. It just didn't work for me. I couldn't go there. It was just too difficult for me to be that close to anyone. So no, absolutely not. I remember the first time I got beat up. I was 11 years old, and when I went home with my younger brother and sister, went home and told my mom about it, she completely ignored me, which was very traumatic for me because I was always taught from my family, and this is, I don't want to blame anybody for anything that happened to me because I know that I created this reality that I experienced. It's of my own making. I did this. It took me a long time to realize it, but I created this reality. But she basically, by ignoring me, really told me that you're on your own here. You need to figure this out, whatever it is. And that was really difficult, but it's hard to say exactly why it played out that way, but I really did need to have the experience that I did have to get me to where I'm at today. It was extremely important that everything that did happen, so that I could understand humanity and understand empaths.
Well, one
so
of the
much of
things
what's going on
that I write about with these amazing souls that are coming in to help with the ascension time frame is the level of sensitivity that they have. And all of humanity is moving from separation consciousness to unity consciousness. As part of that is an increased sensitivity and empathic connections with everybody around you. Depending upon where you are on your path and where you are within your sensitivities, that's going to be different for different generations. I know my generation feels things much less than these new kids coming in, and that's a lot of the reason I wanted to talk about this subject, because the parents very well may not be anywhere near as sensitive to the energies around them as these kids are.
Yeah, a lot of these kids are all on their own. And when you talk about, I'm glad you brought up the idea of sensitivity, because they're one and the same. An empath is sensitive, extremely sensitive people. It's that sensitivity that allows us to feel everything that's out there. And I never really heard that before until recently. They've been talking about these sensitive children and sensitive people. And that's really what it is. We are super sensitive. We pick up everything that's going on. And it's difficult for us to discern what's ours, what's everybody else's, or whose it is. And I've even met young children that are very keen on picking up who's feeling what. I never had that. For me, it was just a mishmash of everything. And it's overwhelming. It's overwhelming for sensitive people to be in this reality, because it's, in a lot of ways, if we look what's going on around the brutality of what's going on around the world, and even the bullying that goes on in high school and stuff, it's like a horror show for sensitive people. It's just overwhelming because they are so sensitive, and they feel so deeply in their soul. They feel everything so deeply. At least that's been my experience.
Let me give you another part of that. These kids go to high school. What are the rooms made of? You've been in construction for a great deal of your life and been a handyman on many levels. These rooms are cinder block construction. You might as well put amplifying mirrors in a room and putting these sensitives in a room feeling John's energy over here, Susan's over here, the teacher's stressed out, picking up theirs, and all of this energy is like in a box reverberating down on them. You call it their own personal hell. Absolutely. And one of the ways that especially young kids are able to dissipate that energy is by moving.
Yes.
And then we label them ADD, ADHD, pick a label, whatever
Put them
you
on
want.
drugs. They
But
can't
no,
sit still.
if you had a itch, if you wanted to call it that, at that level, and you're told you can't move, what would you expect out of these kids? It's natural that they need to move. Now, there's other aspects around the focus part. That's another matter altogether. But still, as far as picking up and feeling all of the energies around you, if they're not positive, if they're more towards the negative or certainly a non-harmonic energy might be a better way of putting it. What's the effect going to be? You just naturally know the person's going to be terribly uncomfortable.
Correct.
And anything else you
Correct.
can imagine.
And, well, you start speaking about schools, we're trying to put a variety of beings that is so broad into a little box and make everybody fit in this little box. And that just isn't going to work anymore. We've been doing the powers that be that create the schools or the work environment, etc., are trying to put everybody in the same little box. And it simply isn't going to work anymore. Because there's so many kids that just aren't going to fit in that box anymore. And we're going to label them as dysfunctional or lazy or whatever we want to do. And it's just wrong. It's just wrong. We are all so very different. We need to be able to express that individuality. You do see with children more acceptance of each other, more acceptance of their differences. If we look at color or nationality or gender identification, most children are very open to the differences that are going on in the classrooms. They don't see all the difference. They just invite it in and embrace it. They're not rejecting it like in our generation. There was so much rejection of anything that didn't fit in the little box that they had constructed for us. So there is a lot of improvement from when I was a child. Believe me, this has been heartening. Heals my heart to see what some children are doing with each other, how much they love each other and accept each other. That's really been a good thing for me to see, and as we're progressing into this awakening, if you will.